With March of the Machine completely spoiled, it's now time to discuss the top 15 cards you should be picking up from the set. Now this is coming from the perspective of a Commander player. If you play in other formats, let us know which cards you definitely want to pick up as well. Also note that all the legendaries we'll be discussing in a separate video. This will be 3 cards from each color in WUBRG order. So without further ado, let's start with white. We literally just posted a video on draw engines in white, a script that Chris did a great job on, and I definitely recommend you watching. But this really could have made the list. Chivalric Alliance for 1 generic and 1 white enchantment. Whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, draw a card. And for 2 generic, discard a card, create a 2/2 white and blue knight creature token with vigilance. For a mere 2 CMC and a barrier of entry very easy to accomplish in Commander, whether you're on partners or playing any form of token strategy, this nets you that sweet, sweet draw that every player needs. Oh, and if you somehow lack the sufficient creatures, it makes 2/2 tokens for you. Again, it triggers off tokens. They couldn't have made this easier. I have a real soft spot for Anafenza the Foremost as a stacks commander, a deck that would highly benefit off this card. But who's your leader of choice for that Chivalric Alliance? Now, if you follow along with our community posts, you will have noticed a very controversial card pop up in the mix. Next up, we have Phyrexian Censor. For 2 generic and 1 white, 3/3 creature Phyrexian Wizard. Each player can't cast more than 1 non-Phyrexian spell each turn. Also, non-Phyrexian creatures enter the battlefield tapped. Okay, did we need more rule of laws? Not really, no, but for us Filthy Stacks players, for other Filthy Stacks players, more is oh so much more. Oh, and it's not just a rule of law effect, it's a pseudo-imposing sovereign as well. So unless your pals are rocking Phyrexian Tribal, they'll have to deal with that too. Any Stacks list will consider this new rule of law wizard, but which decks do you imagine running Phyrexian Censor in? Lastly, time for a personal favorite, and nothing comes close to this card at this cost. For 1 white, we have Surge of Salvation. Instant speed. You and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. Prevent all damage that black and or red sources would deal to creatures you control this turn. I play a lot of mono white, but even outside of that, offering you and your permanents, even your lands, hexproof till end of turn for 1 CMC is unparalleled. In the what's more department, preventing damage means not only safe blocks, provided they need to be made, but protection from the Renegade, Bolt, or Fire Covenant in a pinch. Personally, this is getting placed right in Oswald Fiddlebender, where protecting my extensive board of combo pieces and stacks is integral. But how will you run Surge of Salvation? And our top 3 picks in blue start with Draw. Draw in blue? How surprising. We have Fairy Mastermind at 1 generic, 1 blue, 2/1 creature fairy rogue, flash, flying. Whenever an opponent draws their second card each turn, you draw a card. For 3 generic and 1 blue, each player draws a card. Well, we have more now. In cEDH in particular, draw is the name of the game, particularly when it comes to the command zone. But why should your opponents be the only ones drawing though? This relatively innocuous card will likely stick around for whenever you decide to pop off. I've seen Rhystic Studies last whole games, so I doubt Fairy Mastermind will pull as much hate. And provided it does stick, and your deck runs a silence, which it should if it's in white, if you're making infinite mana and have a way to push cards from your hand or grave back to your library, this can be used to make your opponents deck themselves with its activated ability. So a draw engine plus outlet. If you find your deck lacking in draw, Fairy Mastermind is an easy include. But which list are you considering the fairy in? Alright, next up we have, you guessed it, a counter. Change the equation. For 1 generic and a blue, instant speed, choose 1. Counter target spell with a mana value of 2 or less. Counter target red or green spell with a mana value of 6 or less. So it's oddly specific with its latter mode, but the former hits your Dockside, Thoracle, along with Tainted Pact, Demonic Consultation, most all counter spells, Underworld Breach, and if you want to blast down an opposing commander, it'll hit most all of the red and green ones out there. But what this card suffers from, sadly, is being just another blue counter. This color is so saturated in counters that it doesn't have any room to breathe. Does it replace Delay? Your Spell Snare? I don't play blue in Commander, so I'm leaving this one entirely up to you guys in the comments. Is this a good enough counter in Commander? Let us know your thoughts. Lastly, we have our first battle, and it's a pretty solid one at that. Invasion of Segovia, Enchitus, Sea Tyrant of Segovia. For 2 generic and a blue, battle Siege. When Invasion of Segovia enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 blue Kraken creature tokens with trample, for defense. And on the back end, we have a 3/3 legendary creature Serpent. Non-creature spells you cast have Convoke. At the beginning of your end step, untap up to 4 target creatures. Is this replacing Seedborn Muse? Definitely not. but it is another supplemental untap effect and cost reducer with its ability to enable creatures to include itself and the 2 Krakens you previously made as convokers for non-creature spells. Likely counter spells if we're being honest, so if you're playing against this, just get ready for that. But depending on your deck composition, you can see this help to cheat out all sorts of spells. My only qualm is that it's only on your end step, but then it would be a bit too broken if it was every. I can see this playing well into any Tana partnered list with blue, or again, any deck running stacks with a bunch of hate bears to help cast out spells. And starting off strong in black, we've talked a lot about hate bears in this review, so here's a way to deal with them. Glistening Deluge. Yes, it is a liquid U. For 1 generic and double black sorcery speed, all creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn. However, creatures that are green and or white get an additional -2/-2 until end of turn. Glistening Deluge is really good at eliminating a board of hate bears, doling out -3, -3s to any that exist in white and or green, not to mention hitting opposing Tymnas and Thrasioses. However, it is fighting in a space with a lot of options, similarly to change the equation, so I'm curious to know if you have a list you'd slam this one in. Let us know in the comments. Next up, following up on a Convoke theme with these final 2 cards, first of which being Pile On. For 3 generic and a black, instant speed, Convoke, destroy target creature or planeswalker, surveil 2. Okay, depending on your deck makeup, this could be really easy or really difficult to convoke. For my boy Tevesh, very easy. But also note that 3 of its cost is generic, so it's very forgiving on the convoke. If you've ever had to deal with a planeswalker, consider it dealt. Also, as a bonus, go ahead and fuel for a breach, or bury that top deck tutored reanimate target. All in all, this card's a win-win in the black removal suite. Oh, and lastly, we have a surprisingly good dragon in black that competes with Razaketh for a slot in your list. Definitely check out our recent live stream on Kroxa and Krunos to see how good Hoarding Broodlord is. For 5 generic and triple black, 7/6 creature dragon, hold on, convoke, flying. When Hoarding Broodlord enters the battlefield, search your library for a card, exile it face down, then shuffle. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may play it. Spells you cast from exile have Convoke. So, here's the package. Grab Saw in Half. Convoke casted for 2 generic. Create 2 Hoarding Broodlords. With 1, grab Sacrifice or Burnt Offering if in Rakdos, and with the other, Peer into the Abyss. Convoke cast either ritual, then Convoke cast Peer into the Abyss, and with the 2 mana you have floating, save that for an Imp's Mischief or Tybalt's Trickery you may have in hand. Now proceed to draw half your deck. Now if we do the math, it's Entomb plus Reanimate along with Saw in Half, costing us a total of 2 generic and 2 black. This package is lightweight, easy to accomplish, and the Saw in Half end of the equation operates at instant speed. Do not forget that. So if you need to wait to do this, you can. I love this new Reanimate target and definitely want to see it in more brews. Let me know which lists you're considering Hoarding Broodlord in. I'd love to know in the comments. And now to our top 3 in red, go ahead and add 1 more to the Pyroclasm pile with Into the Fire. For 2 generic and 1 red sorcery speed, choose 1. Into the Fire deals 2 damage to each creature, planeswalker in battle, or put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards +1. Add 1 more than your average Pyroclasm. Is Into the Fire worth it? Well, it's too soon to say how much of an impact battles will have, only knowing about the Siege subtype so far, but this is incredibly versatile with its card quality effect or pure damage for removing a number of threats common to Commander. I want to give a quick shout out to one of my favorite Gruul legends, Daryl, who will absolutely love this, but who do you see throwing Into the Fire? Next up, we have another form of flexible removal with Volcanic Spite. At 1 generic and a red, instant speed, Volcanic Spite deals 3 damage to target creature, planeswalker, or battle. You may put a card from your hand on the bottom of your library. If you do, draw a card. Now, what I like about Volcanic Spite is its ability to replace an entombed target in the hand with something off the top of your deck, just on the back end of bolting a thing. Mind you, it's also just effective card quality outside of its main damage effect. Depending on the battles we see, I can imagine this being a staple card for flipping them at instant speed. Does this replace your Lightning Bolt? No. But this falls into the category of another option. And let me just take a beat here to say that red was really hurting in this set. I will state that WUBRG is really great, but we intend to talk on WUBRG later. So for our last card we'll be discussing, Ren's Resolve. For 1 generic and 1 red, sorcery speed, exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. Card quality effects are far and few between. It's often limited to rummaging effects and or similar exile effects. What I like about Ren's Resolve is that you can play said cards on your future turn. So even if it's just your land drop for this one and your land drop for next turn, it's adding value that you wouldn't otherwise have. I can't see this getting play outside of mono red, but it is a notable card from the set. And at that common slot, you'll likely pull this during a pre-release, so hang on to this one. Finally, we come to green with our second battle, one we've most likely all heard of, Invasion of Ikoria. At X and double green, Battle Siege. When Invasion of Ikoria enters the battlefield, search your library and or graveyard for a non-human creature card with mana value X or less and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle. After whittling down its 6 defense, it will flip over to Zalortha, Apex of Ikoria, an 8/8 legendary creature dinosaur reacher. For each non-human creature you control, you may have that creature assign its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. We're mostly into this battle for its top effect. It's very excellent tutor, another auto-include for the mono-green community, along with the plethora of excellent creature tutors that exist in that color. The 6 defense is pretty difficult to punch up to, but provided you do, you get a bomb that assists your army with distributing a mess of damage. I can see this easily slotting into Savala Heart of the Wild list, but which decks will you be slamming Invasion of Ikoria in? Now, draw utilities are a must, with multifunctional ones serving 2-fold benefits. And here we have Tribute to the World Tree. For triple green enchantment, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card if its power is 3 or greater. Otherwise, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Most importantly, this will work with tokens. It's not 1 or more, and whether you draw or not, you get to buff the meeker creatures with 2 +1s. This is easily my favorite ETB draw in the color right now, being an outlet in the aforementioned Savala deck, but is also fantastic value in any go-wide Sithis deck, generating absurd tokens with the likes of Trudge Garden or Sigil of the Empty Throne, 2 of my personal favorite enchantments in Sithis. But outside of Enchantress, how will you brew with Tribute to the World Tree? Last but not least, we have a mana fixer with Ren and Realm Breaker. For 1 generic, double green, 4 loyalty counters, legendary planeswalker Ren. Lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. For +1, up to 1 target land you control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with vigilance, hexproof, and haste until end of your next turn. It's still a land. For -2, mill 3 cards. You may put a permanent card from among the milled cards into your hand. And at -7, you get an emblem with, you may play lands and cast permanent spells from your graveyard. Does your list use Doubling Season or any of its ilk? Well, get ready to ultimate here, because not only can you cast Ren and Realm Breaker and ultimate on the same turn, you'll still have Ren and Realm Breaker afterwards. I can see this being an all-star in decks that do utilize counter doubling alongside lists that need repeatable mill. I really enjoy this Planeswalker, and while I can't say it fits into any cEDH list off the top of my head, I love seeing new Planeswalkers enter the Commander space. Let me know if you have any lists that would enjoy Ren and Realm Breaker. And that's it for our top 15 WUBRG picks from March of the Machine. Not everything is competitively viable, but there is a lot here for the Commander player. Let us know if we missed your favorite card in the comment section down below. We'd love to hear about it. And for more news and coverage on your favorite TCGs, subscribe to LGG. And send this video along to the next gamer with a like. Definitely stay tuned for our legendary coverage from the set. It's going to be very good.